Hi everyone, and welcome back inside Mountain America Stadium for the SunDevilSource post-game show presented by Jones Auto Centers. Gabby Chernoff and Chris Cartman back with you. Excited to be back for another season of coverage for Sun Devil football. Chris, very lofty expectations as we know heading into this season, heading into this home opener against Northern Arizona. A record student section, a sellout in the whole stadium. So just what did you make of tonight's game, the atmosphere, everything?
Expectations really high, right? Coming off of last season. And I think most people were probably disappointed by what they saw. The reality was I thought ASU was going to come out and light the scoreboard up. I thought what we saw in camp, ASU's offense going up against a very impressive defense last season with 10 returners, I thought that we would see the ball move more consistently. The first couple drives, it seemed like that might be what happened. And then ASU had, I think, three and outs in a row, and didn't really figure out any kind of rhythm until the second half. Now, of course, NAU does have a very aggressive and exotic type of a scheme with a lot of blitz pressures that was giving ASU problems. I think it's a tough first opponent in that respect. Dillingham talked about that, but he blamed himself for the high penalties that ASU had, the most under his tenure, which really undid a lot of big offensive plays or momentum and contributed to the issues that ASU had when coupled with how different that the NAU defensive approach is. And I think that those things really made this a less impressive game than what probably otherwise would have been the case.
Now, you mentioned those penalties, the most ever in the Kenny Dillingham era, and Dillingham attributed some of those offensive struggles that might have left fans disappointed as they were leaving the stadium tonight largely to just the amount of penalties. Yeah. How concerned were you with those, and how much do you buy that was the big cause for the struggles on offense?
Well, he said that they have officials out at all their practices, which they do, and we have not seen anywhere near that much laundry on the field at Kajikawa practice facility. And so that was a little bit bizarre, I think, just given 12 penalties. The most ever under Dillingham was 9 on 3 occasions. And you're on this trajectory of improvement as a program, and you have so many of your starters back and people that are returning in roles that are really big, and yet the holding, especially on the offense, I think and then some of the procedural type things, it was surprising to me. I didn't anticipate that. I don't think that he anticipated it. He said he felt like he got out-coached. I think partly because of just how they operated and some of the challenges that they had. Raleek Brown had that long touchdown that was taken back, and then the very next play, you have a 60-yard completion down the field to Malik McLean that gets called back. And then Sam Levitt was trying to calm down the student section who were booing when the ball was kind of pinned against their goal area. And then because of him doing that, he lost track of the clock, and then they got to delay a game. And so that was like a perfect microcosm in a 3 penalties in a row sequence that I think contributed to that inability to get into any kind of a rhythm. And then, of course, also I think that ASU was overly reliant on its star tandem of Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson. That's another thing that fans are going to be, I'm sure, very concerned about.
Yeah, offensively, a big highlight. Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson combined for 2 touchdowns tonight, but Jordan Tyson was virtually the only receiver targeted on the field tonight. How concerning is that for ASU fans? And then along with the struggles on offense, Kenny Dillingham really gave NAU's defensive coordinator a lot of credit for his unique schemes, his more exotic schemes, which he also attributed to the struggles on offense. So how concerning is the fact that it was pretty much just Jordan Tyson being targeted as far as receivers, and then they weren't really able to get into a rhythm against a different style of defense?
Yeah, several factors. Shimon Mateer seemed to be bothered by a calf from Wednesday and into Saturday, and he wasn't out there on the field a lot consistently. Did have that one nice catch, and I think that might have been called back on a penalty. I don't remember. But Jalen Moss got hurt with his foot, and then he wasn't back out there at all. Malik McLean had the long completion that was called back. I thought there would be more Jaron Hamilton. That was surprising to not see him out there really involved. Derek Asabio played a lot because of the issue with Moss. I think that given the pressure that Levitt was under so frequently, I think that contributed to him going to his sort of, safety blanket, his security blanket, if you will, in Jordan Tyson. And that's a pretty good security blanket to have, right? But this was the game where you kind of felt like it would be good for ASU to spread the ball around and see what others could do and get yourself into some sort of a rhythm. It didn't really happen. It's hard to really say how much of that is going to be problematic moving forward because, teams do have a hard time defending Tyson the way that ASU moves him around the formation. And Raleek Brown looked pretty good, and Kyson Brown looked pretty good. I felt, Gabby, like ASU didn't run the ball enough in the first half. They were running for like 7, 8, 9 yards a carry. But what happens a lot of times with coordinators is NAU's playing a lot of numbers in the box, bringing a lot of pressures, and that lends itself to a coach feeling like, okay, we're going to have some one-on-one opportunities. Let's try to take advantage of those in the passing game. And you don't have a numbers advantage in the run game, but the reality is that NAU wasn't able to stop what ASU was doing in the run game. Dillingham said that after halftime they kind of redoubled their focus on getting the ball to their backs, and I think that did have some effect. But how much of that you can attribute to NAU and how much of that was ASU not being as determined as it probably should have been in certain aspects, kind of hard to say, and I think we'll only really know that more as time unfolds. But it absolutely was a lackluster performance overall by the offense. We already know that Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson are great, right? But you got to be able to protect, get the ball out of your hand, not take hits. Levitt took too many hits. That's dangerous. And use your skill athletes a little bit more than ASU was able to in different kind of ways.
And then on the flip side of the ball, the defense, you mentioned how it's been very impressive all throughout preseason camp. They gave up a late score against NAU. So just what did you see? How did you feel about the defense tonight?
Too many conversions allowed on 3rd and 4th down situationals, 3rd and short, 3rd and medium. I feel like ASU needs to button that up. And then playing a zone that's a little bit conservative, that's a bend don't break, quote unquote, or whatever style. Against NAU, I think that's where you might want to dial up a little bit more aggression because you got better athletes across the board. And so that's where you should be able to lock up guys in man versus playing some of these soft zone coverages that NAU was able to get into some sort of an offensive rhythm moving the ball. We saw a very good defense in camp, and I thought that they would build upon what they accomplished last year with 10 returning starters. This wasn't a good performance overall, but it wasn't bad either necessarily. Remember, NAU had great starting field position on several occasions due to ASU's offense struggling or maybe early on not flipping the field with Canyon Floyd, and there was a one long return that NAU had. And so those things all contribute to it. And then the late touchdown when you have a lot of your second and third string guys on the field to make it 19 points versus, a touchdown and a couple field goals. That maybe perceptively changes it a little bit how that's viewed. I don't think it was a bad defensive performance, but it also wasn't good.
And then special teams is something Kenny Dillingham said should be largely drastically improved from a year ago. Jesus Gomez missed a 57-yarder out there, some inconsistencies with Canyon Floyd in his punting game, but we saw on that fake punt, the 4th down, and Kyson Brown was able to convert on that. So what did you think of special teams tonight?
Yeah, great. If you see a look that NAU is going to give you that you can direct snap it to Raleek Brown and convert and keep, that's every team is going to have a different look, so you're not wasting that versus NAU when you could have saved it for somebody else. Martell Hughes blocked a punt. It ended up going 33 yards off his fingertips. That's really good. Canyon Floyd's first punt was poor. Second punt was average. After that, he had a few punts that were actually quite nice. The first kickoff was kicked out of bounds. Second kickoff was shorter. I don't know if that was by design or what, and they used multiple guys kicking off, which was interesting to me when Gomez kicked the first one out of the back of the end zone because NAU had a long return off that short one. overall, you'd have to say this was, I agree with Dillingham, it was a net positive for ASU special teams given what they were able to accomplish. But there were some indicators of things that were problematic or potentially problematic. Now, Raleek Brown, he was extremely dynamic. He's a twitchy guy when he's healthy, as he is out there. Fans didn't get to see that last season because he had the hamstring that basically cost his whole season. But I think he's a guy who can break something. He also had the screen that would have gone for a big play, maybe a touchdown. I had said on social media that was a good possibility, and then that was also called back. So too many things. I'm losing myself on the special teams, of course, but things that just kind of come to my mind. But it wasn't bad, but it wasn't as good as I think that they're going to, expect of themselves as they move forward.
And then you said earlier you kind of expected ASU to come out firing on all cylinders, light up the scoreboard. We saw Texas Tech tonight, their FCS opponent they played against. They did just that. Yeah. They lit up the scoreboard. Texas Tech's supposed to be another top team in the Big 12, as ASU is expected to be. How concerning would you say on a grand big scale is this for ASU fans? Maybe not the highest caliber opponent. They still won. Kenny Dillingham said it was kind of a messy, gritty win, but just given everything that happened, how concerning is this for ASU fans?
Yeah, I would say somewhere between a little bit and moderately. It's hard to put a number on it or a percentage, but there's a lot of things that they're going to have to get better at. And typically, game 1 to game 2 is where you make the biggest improvements. They already played Mississippi State last year, and they had a lot of success. And Mississippi State has less of those exotic type things that are done. I watched a good portion of their game earlier today, and they have tons of new personnel, but a lot of the same sort of schemes in Blake Shapen. So the quarterback and their D-line still plays a lot of odd front. So I don't think they're going to have as many of those moments where they're not sure where pressure's coming from and how to adjust. And my sense is they're not going to commit as many penalties, but when you go on the road in an SEC environment, that should be a lot tougher than playing here with the penalties. So we have to watch that, but it just hasn't been a characteristic or a hallmark of Dillingham's teams, especially last year. And so I feel like they're going to probably get that cleaned up. He was very accountable for that after the game. Center quarterback exchange is going to have to continue to watch that. Ben Coleman had one high snap that led to a bad play. Then he got banged up and Wade Helton went out there, so we got to see about that. Sam Levitt's going to have to – he had some throws that were Jeopardy throws tonight, ones that I thought were he predetermined that he was going to go to Jordan Tyson or just kind of didn't read coverage as well as he should have, and that's something that he's going to have to focus on. So I would say there are several things that they're going to have to get a lot better at to accomplish what they hope to this season. But this wasn't like a dire situation for the opener either by any stretch. And so we'll see if any of this becomes a trend in Starkville.
Yeah, we'll have to see how all of this plays out. Both Chris and I will be in Starkville, Mississippi. Next Saturday, we'll have you all covered. We're flying into Memphis, so maybe a little barbecue review coming your way as well. Big barbecue people over here, if any of you are wondering.
You know it.
But we'll have you covered Tuesday, Wednesday practices, and then, of course, in Starkville against Mississippi State. Until then, thank you so much for watching the SunDevilSource postgame show presented by Jones Auto Centers. Gabby Chernoff and Chris Cartman. We'll see you next week.